Hello everyone, my name is Focus, and today I will be showing you how to encrypt and decrypt Caesar Cipher using C# code. This is going to be a two-part series. The first video will show you how to encrypt messages as a Caesar Cipher, and then the second tutorial will be on decrypting using either known shift or letter frequency analysis, which we will get into that video. So what is a Caesar cipher? Well, I have a diagram here. When someone wants to encrypt a message, say they have the message cow. If they want to do this, what they do is they select a shift value. So for this tutorial, I'll just use a shift value of 2. Okay, so what this means is that this alphabet here will be shifted over to the right 2 values. So instead of lining up A to A, B to B like that, A will now go to C, B will now go to D, C to E, etc., etc. So what this would mean for our message cow here, the C would go over 2, so D to E, so the C would become an E, the O would become a Q, and the W would become a Y. So EQY here would be our decrypted message. And then in order to decrypt it, of course, we would just go backwards knowing this number, but that'll be in the second video. So what I'm going to show you now is how to do this in C#. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to start a new project. So just go up to here. I'm using Visual Studio 2019. You can use any version really. I've done this in multiple, so it'll be fine. Then what we need to do is you need to select a console app using the .NET framework and make sure it says C# here, and then click next. And then for this name, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to do it, name it tutorial Caesar Cipher. There we go. And you can change location if you want. It really doesn't matter too much. And then you click create. Okay, so now that the project is loaded, we can begin with our encrypting. So that's what the first video is going to be about. It's going to be about how to change regular text that the user inputs and turn it into, or to shift it over. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to give the user some prompt as what they can do. So we're going to write to the console because this is a console app. So to do that, we write console dot and then write line parentheses quotation marks. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to put a 1 like this, and then I'll say encode Caesar message. And then make sure to end it with a semicolon here. And so what this will do here is it will give basically just write to the screen. That's one of the options. So another thing we need to do here, we'll do console.writeLine, and then we'll just do 2 for now, and we'll do quit. And that will just be used to exit out of the program. It's always good to have something besides just like the X button on the console. So then now we need to store the user's input into a variable. So to do that, we're going to get a string and then selection is what I'll call it. You can name it whatever you want, just remember, and then console.readLine. And that is how we're going to get the user's what they type into the console. So now with this selection, we now have that they typed in 1 or 2. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to put it in a switch case. So we'll type switch and then parentheses and selection like that, and then just a couple of curly braces like that. So now we have the switch, and first thing we need to do is we need to put case. And so we'll type case, and then in parentheses you put 1 because that's what we want the user to enter to select encode. And then we do a colon, and then press enter, and then leave a little space, and then type break with the semicolon. Okay, so here is when we can start encoding the message in this block of code here. So another thing we should do is we should prompt the user again to enter in the message that they want to encode. So we'll type console.writeLine, writeLine, and then we'll just ask, or we'll just tell them, enter in a sentence to be shifted. And then I always like to put a colon there and a space, and we'll end it with a semicolon. So now they'll be prompted to enter in their the sentence that they want to be shifted. So then we need to store that in another variable. So up here, up above the main method, because otherwise none of our other methods will be able to get it. So string plain text, and there. Okay. And we might have to use static string plain text because it's a method. Okay, so now what we can do here is after it asks them to enter a sentence to be shifted, we'll do plain text equals console dot read line. And what this will do, again, just like above, it will read in what they type and store it into the plain text variable here. So then what we need to do now is ask them how much they want to shift the alphabet. So we'll do console.writeLine again, and we'll say enter a shift value, and then another space, end it with a semicolon on the outside, right there. And then again, up here, right under the plain text variable, we'll need to declare a static int, and then shift is what we'll call it. And this will be the number that the alphabet is shifting. So then we'll go down here to after it says enter shift value, and then we'll set the shift equal to console.readLine. And there's going to be an error here because shift is an int variable, but readLine returns a string. So in order to fix that, just before that, we'll have to write convert.toInt32, and then put parentheses around the console.readLine. So it should just look like this. And then last but not least, we need to type shift message, and this is going to be a method that we're going to create down below. So we're going to pass it the plain text here, and then the value that it's going to be shifted. And so now we can start and declare this method down below. So find the curly brace for the main method, which ends right here, and we'll just make a little room. And then what we need to do is we need to create that method that we called up there. So it'll have to be a static, and then we don't really need it to return anything. We're just going to print it directly into the console. Then we'll do shift message, and then in parentheses we need the parameters that we were passed in, which was the plain text and the int shift. Okay, and then curly brace and bring that down. Okay, so this part can be a little confusing, so just bear with me. So the first thing we should do is set our variables. So one of the things that we're going to need is we're going to need a char array. And what this is going to do is basically it's going to break up the message into individual letters. And that way it'll be easier to change them using things like loops. So let's declare the char array here, and that's just char with 2 square brackets like that, and then I'm just going to call it char letters, and that's just the name, equals plain text dot to lower, because we don't, the way that we'll shift it, it gets messed up if it has uppercase letters. And then we'll do to char array. And this method here will just split, oops, I forgot to capitalize it. it will split the string up into its individual characters like we need. And then we also need a string variable to hold the resulting ciphertext. So I'll just do string ciphertext, and then we'll just, for now, we'll set it equal to nothing there. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to cycle through each of the letters in the array and shift them. So in order to do that, we're going to use a for loop. So we'll do for, and then int I equals 0, and then I is less than char letters dot length, and then I plus plus, and then we'll have the curly braces here. And then we need another variable. We're going to call it, it's going to be an int, and it's going to be called original value. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set that to the integer value of char letters I. Oops, I missed the I. And it went and it went on the wrong side here. This keyboard is really bad. Okay, like this. So what this piece of code here does, oh, I just messed up with that 3. Okay, what this piece of code here does is it creates an integer variable named original value, and what it does is it takes the index of I. So it's going to start at 0, so it's going to take the first letter in the plain text, and it's going to convert it to an integer. And what this does is it makes the ASCII value. It turns it into the ASCII value, which is just a numerical value that represents a letter. So by changing it into this number form, we can easily add 1 or add whatever the shift is and shift the text. So after we do this, what we need to do is we need to make sure that it is an actual letter that we're shifting and not a period. So what I'll show you here is an ASCII table. So here is an ASCII table, and as you can see here, for each key there's a bunch of different numbers here. But the thing that we need to be looking at here is the HTML value, and that's what the ASCII value is. So let me close out some of these ads here. So we converted it to lowercase. So back to our cow example here, if we were to get the ASCII value of C, it would be 99. So that's what this bit of code here was turning. It would turn C into an integer, which would be 99. So we need to make sure that we're only in the range of 97 to 123, because that is, or 122, because those are the letters A to Z. And we don't want to be able to shift things like parentheses, because that's just another deal to do. So we'll just make sure that it is a letter. I'll just type that. So what we'll do is we'll do an if statement, and we'll say if the original value is greater than 96, and if the original value is less than 123, and then we'll put the curly brackets here. And so that basically checks if it's an A through Z. That's basically what this is saying. So then now what we need to do is we're just going to make a temporary variable. We'll call it shifted value and make sure it's an int, and we'll set that to 0. And then we will do another if statement, and then we're going to have a second set of parentheses, and we'll say if the original value is, or if original value plus the shift is greater than 123, and then after that we'll do an else with more curly braces like that. And okay, so what this part here is doing is it's adding the shift to the ASCII value of the character, and then it's seeing if it goes over 123. If it does, if we look back at the ASCII table, if it goes over 123, that's when we start getting into these characters, and it'll start messing with our results. So what we need to do is inside this if statement here, we're going to make another temporary variable, and I'll just call it leftover. So int leftover equals 122 minus the original value, and then semicolon, and then after that we'll do shifted value equals 96 plus, and then we'll do shift minus leftover. So this code does seem just a little bit confusing, but all it's basically doing is it's getting how much higher the shift goes over this 122 mark, and it will reset it so it goes over to the A. So basically, once it gets to Z, it will figure out how much it still has to go, and it will go up to A and then shift from there. So that's all that code does. It just prevents any issues with the special characters. So then in the else part of this if statement, we'll have to do shifted value equals the original value plus the shift. Okay, and then so if it's just somewhere in the middle of the alphabet and it's easily, say A to C, it can just easily, without any math, just shift that there. So then after this, we need to convert the integer back to, or the ASCII value back into a letter. So what I'll do is I'll do string new letter, and that's going to be the resulting letter, and will equals convert dot to char, and then we'll do shifted value. So that's going to, oops, I can't spell here, value. That is also not good. And I keep missing the keys on this keyboard. Value. Jeez, there we go. So what this will do is it'll convert the ASCII value back into a letter, and then we'll do dot to string, and that will convert the character into a string. And then we'll do ciphertext, and then plus equals new letter. And so that will add the new letter to this variable up here, which is keeping track of our message that is shifted. So after this if statement here, right here, we need to do an else and put the curly braces. So this is this basically handles if it's a space or if it's a special character already, then it's just going to leave it alone. So what it's going to do is it's just going to create a new string called new letter, and basically the same thing that we did above. So convert dot to char, but instead of shifted value, we're going to do the original value because we didn't shift the space or the special character at all. And then dots to string. And then once again we just do ciphertext plus equals new letter. Okay, and then this method is, or this for loop is done. Now just after the for loop, we just need to basically write our output onto the screen. So in order to do that, we just do console dot write line, just like we have always done. And then I like to do parentheses. And then what we can do is \n, that'll make a new line so it doesn't get messy at all. And then we'll just do a plus outside of the quotations and then type ciphertext. And this will basically just output our ciphertext onto the screen so that we can see it. So let's run this. Let's click start and let's see if it will work. So remember, we had cow here. We shifted it to, and it went over to EGY. So if I did my math here correctly, we'll see if this worked. So here's the output. So it just says encode. So we type 1, push enter, and enter in a sentence. So we'll just do cow for now, and enter in the shift value 2. Oh, I forgot. After here, after the end, we need to do, or after the switch statement in the main, we need to do console.readLine. There we go. That just makes it so that when it's done with its output, it'll wait for you to hit a key until it closes out again. So let me pull that back up here. 1, we want to enter in cow. 2, and EQY is the shifted value, and that is exactly what we got when we did it by hand. So that is the first part of the tutorial, which was encrypting. This will work for any amount of letters or characters. Like I said, like we did before, the special characters will just be ignored, and so will numbers. So you could just say, this is a tutorial. And you can shift it any number of value you want. You could say 23 if you wanted, and then it will shift that here. So yeah, that is the first part of the tutorial. In the next one, I will show you how to decode this into regular text. Thanks for watching.